All right, what are we here to talk about? We're not here to talk about really calibers per se or firearms, um, but at the same time, we're here to talk about guns when you're not shooting them. Now, not in the category of if you're simply just having a firearm stored, unloaded, this is not really going to come into play. Or if you're the kind of person that only loads their firearms when they go to the range and dispenses the ammunition right away and then cleans them and puts them back unloaded, it's not going to be really a factor. This is going to be a factor for people that actually carry firearms to protect themselves, their family, or whoever, and their property, etc. But if you're carrying loaded firearms or even storing loaded firearms, either way, um, um, some factors to keep an eye out. Ammunition, just like the gun, but also ammunition is it can be rather fragile, and there are certain factors to keep an eye, regardless of the caliber, um, or whether it's a full metal jacket or hollow point or etc. There's things to look after, especially when it comes to more premium ammunition. When it comes to defense ammunition, generally people will use that for carry, but they're not going to shoot it a lot because it gets expensive. It could be double, triple, or quadruple the price compared to range ammunition. But remember, guys, pretty much every war ever fought with firearms for cartridges was using some type of, since over 100 years, a full metal jacket. Before that, maybe some type of solid lead bullet, but I digress. That's non-jacketed. Either way, though, the point is, though, when you're carrying a loaded firearm, what are you doing? Well, you're chambering around, right? And you're going to have a loaded magazine. Now, there's different factors. Let's just talk about the round that gets chambered first. Chambering around, there's, I guess let's just talk about 3 ways to chamber. The first way, which I don't recommend, is just dropping a round into the chamber. You can do that. You could, not talking about revolvers. Revolvers are totally separate. Revolvers in the cylinder, cylinders are not beating up the actual cartridge. They just slide right in. We're talking about if it's not fired. When they're fired, they might expand, and depending on how dirty the gun is, they might not extract fully. But I digress. We're talking about for lawful carry, and when you come home at night, or just in general, whenever you check, you should be checking your ammunition because obviously, if you didn't fire it, you can't assume that the ammunition is always going to stay in a perfect working condition. And we'll get to that. But let's just talk about loading. So you drop around the chamber. That's not really a good choice. Perhaps if you're in the shit and you don't have a magazine or your magazine broke, if that's all you have is some ammunition, you can drop around the chamber because your magazine's broken. So you should be carrying extra magazine. The point is, I digress. That's the only caveat I can see that. When you just drop around the magazine and you slam the slide home, you're going to beat up your extractor, no matter what the firearm is. And so what's the other way you should be loading your firearm? Put the rounds in the magazine. That way when you close the slide, it catches the round and feeds it in. Now there's 2 ways to do that with the slide open, which is what I recommend. You could also have the slide closed. And I'll slam the Glock home because... So you could insert a magazine here, and then you're going to have to pull the slide back and chamber your first round. I don't recommend that. You could do it. 2 reasons why. If you have a fully loaded magazine, for example, this holds 17, but if I had 16 in right now, if I had 17 in here, it's very tight, and depending on the firearm and the type of magazine, we'll talk about factory Glock magazines. Glock magazines are designed really to have maximum capacity. So 17 rounds here in this size gun, which normally when this came out, most guns are having 15. Now the thing is, though, you load a fully loaded 17-round mag in a Glock 17, it doesn't want to just go in nice and easy. Like, oh, click, you got to smash it in. And 2 things, when you smash that in on a closed slide, these rounds got to go somewhere, and there's not much room once this is fully loaded. People always talk about, oh, that last round is so hard to get in. So you're gonna get damage to it. You can see minor damage, but I'm not too worried about that. But you should be checking and rotating your ammunition. The bottom line is that top round especially, even if I load it on an open slide, that's going to prevent smashing all the ammunition, compressing ammunition. And then when you close the slide, now the mag's not fully loaded. It's 16 plus 1. You could top it off, but once again, depending what you want to do, obviously if you're a police officer or a department, they're going to want you probably carrying topped off, no diddy, for also other reasons. Because if God forbid something happens, or even police officers that are involved in some type of altercation, even if they didn't shoot. For example, I know someone that they got shot, and they still took his firearm for evidence, part of the situation. And so, for example, if you're missing one round of your magazine, you're gonna have to explain that, and then it could be like, "Well, I forgot to fully load it," or "Did you fire around some other time and you just didn't tell anyone? Did you discharge your firearm on duty?" You see what I'm saying? But I digress. We're talking about for regular carry. When you're carrying a fully loaded magazine, if you're stuffing it in on a closed slide, now all that ammunition is gonna get crunched in, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna rack the slide back, and when you're doing that, when you have a fully loaded magazine that's in here, and you rack the slide back, you're going to be crunching the top of that round. You're going to beat the shit out of that whole round. And so now, if it's one time, okay. But if that's how you load your fire every time, and for example, if it's your carry ammo, and you're obviously not shooting it unless you're at the range, or God forbid you have to use self-defense, generally speaking, so it's just going to be the same ammunition. You get rotated over and over, carrying it, whether you unload when you get home or you occasionally unload to inspect and clean the firearm. Some carry ammo you might have for a year or two, right? So the constant abuse of being smushed in on a closed slide, it's going to take a beating. And then just being chambered. Even if you open the slide and you put the mag in, which is going to be less abuse on the ammunition, okay, and the frame. We'll get to that. So the best recommended, open the slide. Then you insert, drop the slide. Just feeding into the chamber and also extracting when you clear it. The rims will get beat up. These things don't last forever. Okay, and so let's just give some examples of what could happen over time. For example, this has been used, carried, several times. I think I've had this ammunition here for quite some time. It's in my mix here, but I pulled out of rotation. I always inspect my ammunition, and you see that I don't mind a little wear here from being it, but that major dent, okay, that comes from a firearm that I had fully loaded, and after you drop round in the chamber, now it's not fully loaded, but then you top off the ammunition, and maybe you're going to carry that way, so I got +1. Well, over time, depending on, some guns vary more than others, over time, you see what happened there? Now, could you still carry this one? Sure you could, if you had to. But that being said, I'd put it at the bottom of the magazine. I wouldn't have it as my first choice. That being said, if you inspect it and see this, I would rotate it out. Maybe you want to rotate your carry ammunition every 6 months, or at least every year. Look at it, and then, etc. So, things take wear. That's an issue. I don't like that. So it's going to be put aside into my, loose ammo thing that's for either only emergency or eventually just shoot it at the range. But I wouldn't carry that. Look at this 45 here. If you know the 45 cartridge, it's not supposed to look like that. Well, what happened here? Well, I had it in this firearm here, and it wasn't like that. I inspect it all the time, whether I'm carrying or I keep it at the bedside gun. But somehow, from the last time it was chambered, the round got compressed. It didn't happen the first time, okay? And it wasn't always using this as the first round to chamber. I'd rotate stuff. So now some ammunition, for example, like I think the Remington Golden Saber and the Federal HST, they might have an extra crimp where it's going to help prevent that case setback. But I would not recommend carrying like this. Could you? You could. Once again, if that's all the ammunition you have, if any one round was bad, I'd put it on the bottom of the magazine, not my first choice. But that being said, what's going to happen like this is you're going to increase the pressure. Now, luckily, 45 is a lower pressure cartridge, but then when you go to a 40 caliber, which for the size of the round, especially in 180 grain, the 180, see, the case is always the case, whether you go 165 or 155 or 180 grain for 40 caliber, right? Any caliber, the case is not getting bigger if you stay in that caliber. But the bullets have different weights, and the heavier you go, there'll be less room in the actual cartridge, in the case. Predominantly in the 180 grain, the full length bullet for the 40 caliber, if you get some case setback, there's really not much room. the 180s, even though 180 has lower pressure than the 165, there's less room in that cartridge. And the point is, from what I've read online, that more people have issues with cartridges exploding in the 180. So keep that in mind on your carry ammunition. Like I said, when you're loading at the range, if you're just going to shoot the ammunition right away, I mean, I'll salute. I mean, but you still should be looking at it if it's bad from the factory. But generally, you're not. I'm talking about how carrying and not shooting the gun over and over again, how within the magazine rounds could get some denting, okay? From the slide, also from extraction, things just take a toll. It might not happen right away, it might happen later on. Now let's look, so this one we saw, no, we didn't see this one. Now here we have a Federal HST. This should be plus P 124 grain. You see it has some sealant there. That's just loose on the back there, but that whole primer is sealed. That's going to help for moisture, or God forbid if you got wet in the rain, or if you somehow got dumped into a lake and you got out, and so hopefully your ammunition will still work. Okay, so more expensive ammunition is going to have a primer sealant, which is not necessary for range ammo, and not necessarily as an absolute, but for defense, when it comes to your life, like this is, you're going to choose the ammunition that you're going to carry, especially because you're not going to use it right away, generally speaking, right? You don't know when you have to defend yourself. It wouldn't hurt to have ammunition with the primer sealant, moisture and everything, so you don't get a dud. Anyways, though, so here we see the nickel plating, and we don't have much beading on this. So, anyways, yeah, that's going to be, I use that as an example. Here we have a SIG V-Crown 124 grain. And this is non plus P. But this is nickel plated. In this case, is in very good condition. No major damage there. Another, which one's this? Another Federal HST. Now, some ammunition from the factory will have some little markings on the jacket there, and I'm not too worried about that. But I digress. So now I just wanted to give you an example of a few things to look at. The actual bullet of the actual projectile, there could be case setback. That's my priority, really worrying about that. If I see that happen, I'm going to rotate that out. And how are you going to know unless you inspect your ammunition? Because if you just carry it and leave it, now, carrying and leaving, if you're going to have one stored somewhere, generally it's only chambered that one time, right? But the rounds that get chambered several times, let's just say you don't carry the same gun every day, or you carry it all week, obviously you didn't fire it because it's just for defense, that's what you're doing, and you clear it, you clean it, and you reload it. So certain rounds over time might take a beating. Let's look at this 45 here. This is a tumble upon impact. You see it does have some marring on the brass. This is not nickel-coated brass, so it's not a slick. The nickel plating on the brass definitely helps it keep a little slicker. Has a lubricious property, and I digress though. But this is still definitely serviceable, but just some little wear on the brass. For example, here we have another cartridge here. This, I forget, this is a Norma, a monolithic copper round there. But you see some wear on this coating here. Check your primers too, though. If you start seeing a lot of little dimples on it, perhaps maybe you have an issue with your firing pin. Maybe your firing pin spring is wearing out, and when chambering, when you're not shooting, maybe perhaps that firing pin is able to move too freely. So that's another thing too. Keep a look on your primers, and then remember what gun you're carrying with. So I digress. Now, the other thing is, when loading on if my slide was closed, if I'm going to jam a magazine in there, if the magazine is fully loaded, okay. On the frame like this, which is stainless steel, and the rails are stainless steel, and the slide stainless steel, I'm not too worried about it. But on the polymer gun, if you're slamming your fully loaded magazine into your slot, into your firearm, and then and it's really not too easy to insert, the pressure is going back here, and I'm going to take this Glock apart, and so you can see which part's going to be taking all the energy, And you could eventually crack. People have cracked their Glock frame rails. It happened even especially on a metal gun that's aluminum. Aluminum's not as strong as stainless steel. So I would be more concerned about on a polymer or aluminum frame gun. Like I said, when you're loading a firearm, I would lock the slide back, insert the fully loaded magazine, drop it, and load it. Now from there, if you want to go +1, okay. Meaning, because now you're gonna, so don't just drop it in the chamber. Open the slide to prevent damage to this, and also so that way less damage on the rear frame. Okay, because every time if you're loading on a closed slide, you're damaging ammunition, putting a lot more pressure on the bottom of the base plate, because when you're slamming, boom, into a closed slide, and this is getting slammed in, okay, all that ammunition and everything else has to go down, has to be able to insert, and there's not much room, and it's putting a lot. When these are fully loaded, that spring is so compressed, it's putting the most pressure on that base plate, and now you're slamming it in. These things, magazines, ammunition, they're not forever. Obviously, the gun's going to last longer, generally speaking, than the mag or the ammunition. But depending on how you treat it, you can make things last longer. Let's show the back of the Glock. So there's the back of the Glock, and then you have the two frame rails there. So when you're slamming that magazine in there, okay, in a sense, that slide, you're not going to break the slide. But what's going to give? What's the weakest point here? You got these two little metal tabs here that are molded into the polymer. I'm not knocking the Glock design. It's a fine, serviceable. It's a strong design that, but anything, you can wear it out, right? So keep that in mind. So when you're loading a firearm, I would lock the slide back. And for example, let's just show you how easy. I'm one-handed here, so I'm not one-handed. I'm one-handed holding the phone. You see that? Look at that. So if the slide was back, it would be the same thing. So easy, that magazine loaded in there. Fantastic. And then there you have your ejector. Here's the other thing too. This is a factory size magazine. If you're going to be going with sticks, give me a second. Let's say you're going with these massive, stupid sticks. Okay, maybe you want more capacity. Maybe you're making a rap video. Okay. Now, let's see here. Does this have a design? I think it might. Yes. You see, it has a tab here. That's a nice thing. Give me a second here. Now, in that tab, excuse me as just like Saturday night. You see, well, that tab doesn't do anything. It doesn't line up to the bottom. So when you're slamming this in, okay, you don't want to slam it so hard that the only thing stopping it is that ejector. And on 320s, for example, on a SIG 320, people have bent their ejector. And if you bend your ejector on 320, remember the insert is the firearm, and you have to send it back to SIG, which is the gun, to get rebent. And if it's going to get replaced, then the whole serialized part of the firearm's got to get replaced. Here, you could replace the ejector, but still, the point is you don't want to do damage to your firearm. You don't have to. So, once again, loading a firearm, I would have the slide locked back, insert it nice and easy, drop it, and then if you want to top it off, fine, top it off. But just be mindful that when anytime you're inserting, because now, once it's loaded, you have to have it around the chamber, the slide's going to have to be closed. Anytime you're inserting a fully loaded magazine to a pistol with the slide closed, you're going to put maximum pressure on the back of the rails. You're going to put maximum pressure on the rounds in the magazine because there's not much room. When it's like life, when things are at max capacity, under stress. When this is fully loaded, it's under maximum stress. So you're fucking slamming it in there like it owes you money. Like I said, if you're at the range, it's not going to affect the ammunition because you're going to be shooting it right away. Okay. But when I'm at the range, I'm going to lock the slide back, load it. And then when this weapon's empty, the slide's going to be locked back unless you roll the slide. And then when I reload, the slide's going to be locked back. Okay? So anyways, though, but if you're going to be topping off the firearm, so you load it, puts it around the chamber, lock it back, and you put it around it, now you're going to be putting a fully loaded mag into a closed slide. So whenever you're putting a fully loaded mag into a closed slide, you're going to be putting more damage onto the brass itself. And like I said, the back frame rails. Over time, is it going to happen overnight with a quality firearm? It shouldn't. I'm just saying though, why cause extra stress to the firearm when needed? And you can say, well, it's built for this. I don't care whatever anything's built for. Everything has a certain tolerance for eventually things break. So the things that I could do to keep things, I'm not going to abuse them. I'm going to maintain them properly, clean them, and I'm not going to. I'll shoot the guns a lot at the range, but I'm not going to abuse these things for no reason, thinking that they're infallible, that they can't crack. And polymer's nice because it's pretty much impervious to corrosion and sweat and water. It's better than metal per se, but at the same time this polymer flexes, and thinking that you can't crack this or even squeeze this, yeah, I can almost squeeze it. So it does have a natural flex. I digress. I'm not here to talk about polymer versus steel. Remember though, the slide and the barrel locks into steel inserts into the polymer though. So even though it's a polymer frame, it's a polymer frame holding steel where steel needs to. So it's not a truly polymer frame because there is steel in the polymer, where this is all steel in the lower and the rails are in. The rails are part of the lower, where here the steel is molded into the polymer, or the polymer is molded around the steel, however you want to look at that. I digress. So keep that in mind. When it comes to carrying and defending yourself, you should be checking your ammunition for rust, for moisture. You could have dirt and debris in your magazine and your firearms, especially if you're down south with a lot of moisture. If you sweat a lot, etc., you're carrying by your ass crack and you get a lot of sweat, there you go. Watch out for case setback, which this is a no-go. I would swap that out. Watch out for case denting. Okay, that can happen. This didn't happen overnight. I've had this carrying ammunition. I think I bought this in Florida when I lived there a year and a half ago, perhaps. And through time and having that in some of my 9mm, things just get worn out. Okay, so that's going to be put aside. So, like I said, generally your range ammo stays in the box. You load at the range, you shoot at the range. That's never going to have an issue. But your carry ammunition is generally be getting rotated. Unless if you're John Wick and you're getting attacked every day, well, then your duty carry ammunition is just, it's going to be getting shot the same day. But in real life, that's not happening. You're not going to be getting into shootouts every day unless, if you are, you're going to be doing a lot of explaining to the DA how you have so many ops and that somehow, whatever, it's all justified. I digress. So keep that in mind about how to load a firearm with the slide open, how to top it off, no diddy, and question yourself, and then how loading on a closed slide, how it's going to put more damage to the possible in the frame, especially if you're slamming it in, and how when you do that also, it puts more pressure on the ammunition. And so even the metal inserts here in the polymer frame here of the Glock magazine, polymer molding over the steel, things are going to put pressure on the case, and the cases are going to start getting scratches and getting marred up. But then also, like I said, the top of the round, if you're slamming it in, it's also going to get beat up from the bottom of the slide. You see how there's brass right there? Why is there brass right there? Well, that's from actually shooting. Obviously, you don't see a nickel coating on that. Why? Because I'm not really shooting tons of my carry ammunition because it's expensive. Okay, I'm not shooting dollar bullets and paper for no reason. When I get a new gun, I'll throw a mag through it, make sure it likes the ammunition. But you know what I'm saying, though. So the range ammunition I'm shooting is all brass. So you see, it's got brass wearing on it because this is stronger than brass. So that's how things work. Weaker and stronger. Whatever's stronger is going to wear whatever's weaker. So this slide is stronger than any ammunition, any case, nickel case. Now, if you go to steel case, that's another topic. And I'm not carrying or shooting any steel case ammunition, like when it comes to like Tula and shit like that. And I digress. What else can I say? What else can I say? Was that it? I think so. I think I covered the things I want to talk about. Case setback, case getting dented, scratches on the ammunition. Yeah, so check your ammo, rotate your ammo, inspect your ammunition. Yeah. All right, I'll see you around. These things are important, especially when the aspect of carrying a firearm. And yeah, see you around.